We're working on chapter 18 today, the last chapter in the book, the last chapter of the semester. It always makes me excited to be here. So, speaking of excited, we're going to talk about energy in this chapter. And the energy that we talk about is going to be in the form of ATP, which we can see in a few places on this page. Here's some ATP. This is just a different version of this picture here, but we also have some ATP here in a few places. I'm going to put an extra big box around this ATP because it's a larger quantity. But we've seen this picture here throughout the semester. We actually started with it our very first day. And we talked about if you eat some food, the food gets broken down, goes through the citric acid cycle, and eventually we make ATP out of it. And we summarized that as a combustion reaction. So metabolism and combustion are essentially the same overall experiment or overall reaction. In combustion, we have some kind of fuel, we add oxygen to it, and then we get carbon dioxide and water, and of course our good friend energy. That might be heat and light if it's a campfire, but here it's going to be ATP. And so combustion is taking some fuel, adding some oxygen. Here's oxygen coming in to my pathway, and we can't see oxygen here, but here's that oxidative, so that means oxygen's coming in. We get some carbon dioxide coming out of our reaction in metabolism or our pathways. We could draw that carbon dioxide coming out here. And then we get water as a product, and we can see water as a product here. Oh, here's the carbon dioxide that's coming out. So whether we're talking about burning something or metabolizing food is going to be the same as burning food. We take that fuel and we break it down until we get energy. So a couple of other terms that we will use here. In metabolism, we will talk about substrates, and we will also spend some time looking at the coenzymes that help with the reaction. And just to remind you what this looked like, if I have an enzyme, we're going to have dozens of enzymes that help us here. A coenzyme will maybe sit there in the active site to help out, and then my substrate is going to fit right in that active site as well. So the colors that I'm going to use for our substrates are going to be green, and our fuel or our food is our original substrate, and then our coenzymes are going to be pink. So this coenzyme that helps out is going to be pink, and then my substrate is going to be green, and we'll see those colors throughout the chapter, including the orange for our energy as well. So essentially what we do in metabolism is we take whatever food you eat, whatever fancy food, plain food, whatever, and we break it down into smaller pieces. And then we break it down into even smaller pieces until it's all acetyl groups. So we take our food, we break it down. This is digestion here. And we continue to break it down until we have what's called an acetyl group. And here's an acetyl group right here. It's 2 carbons. So we take all of our food, whatever food you eat, it all ends up looking exactly like this, these acetyl groups. And then those acetyl groups, we get rid of the carbons out of them. And so essentially all we're left with from our food are hydrogens. And those show up on what are called high energy coenzymes. So at this point we take our food, which is almost nothing, and we attach it to coenzyme A. And then later we attach it to the coenzymes FAD and NAD. And we can see the same thing over here. It's the same exact process, just shown a different way. Here's that coenzyme A, and then here are the coenzymes NAD and FAD. So we take our substrate, and now it's attached to some coenzymes, and then eventually what we get out of that food is energy. And most of the energy is going to come here at the bottom. So let's take a look at just what the different stages are here, and I'm going to work off this picture because it's a little bit bigger. So stage 1 of metabolism is going to be this step here, where some of these groups we've seen before, chapter 16 proteins, chapter 14 polysaccharides, chapter 15 lipids. You eat all those delicious foods, and in stage 1, what we have is digestion of those foods, or in a chemistry class, we're going to say we have hydrolysis reactions. So we take those polysaccharides and we hydrolyze them down to monosaccharides. We take those triglycerides and we hydrolyze them to get a glycerol and fatty acids. We take proteins, we hydrolyze them, we get amino acids. You've seen all those before, right? In all those other chapters. So everything's coming together here in this chapter. It's kind of cool. So that's stage 1. Then we take all these different foods, right? They're still different from each other. And in stage 2, that's going to take us down here. So stage 2, we're going to convert all of that food, whatever food you ate, into acetyl-CoA. And acetyl-CoA, acetyl is this green little 2-carbon piece here, and it's attached to coenzyme A, which we'll look at in more detail in a couple minutes here. So all food now looks exactly alike, and this is called the common metabolic pathway now, because everything is an acetyl group connected to a CoA, and so now everything looks the same going forward. At this point also, I want to point out to you that we have moved inside of the cell. So digestion is going to happen out in the digestive system, in your stomach and your intestines, and then those smaller pieces are able to move into the cell. So we're working in the cytoplasm or in the mitochondria. All right, over here, if we can see this in a cell, this big purple would be the cell membrane here. All right, we have the cytoplasm out here, and then here are these mitochondria. Mitochondria kind of look like little kidney beans. They're dark in color, so when you have dark muscles, dark meat, it's because they have a lot of mitochondria in them. And those are there to help us produce energy, so mitochondria are where we produce the bulk of our ATP. So we're inside the cell now at this point, at the end of stage 2. Stage 3 then is going to be this Krebs cycle, or citric acid cycle, as we call it in chemistry. So this Krebs cycle is stage 3, and that's where we're going to convert that acetyl-CoA into high energy coenzymes, and those coenzymes are NADH and FADH2. And we've seen those help with some oxidation and reduction reactions throughout the semester, right? And they're here again. At this point, your food is just these high-powered hydrogens. It's a proton and it's an electron, and we need both of those to carry on to the next phase. So that's step 3, or stage 3. And then stage 4 is going to be this activity here. Stage 4 is where NADH and FADH2, so those high-energy coenzymes, are converted to ATP, because that's the whole point of eating, right, is to stay alive and have energy to stay alive. So the NADH and FADH2 from stage 3 go through the electron transport chain and oxidative phosphorylation. There's some oxidation happening there, and that's where we use the bulk of our oxygen that we breathe in, and so at that point we get ATP. There are, again, bits of ATP produced here, but we're going to have much more produced at this point. So you need to be able to navigate your way around these pictures, relate it to combustion, relate it to enzymes, and then describe and identify these different stages of metabolism.